My God, that theme, I can't get enough. Just injected into my veins. We talking New York Jets. But right now, all right, you see, Abby's not here. All right. Michael K, my guy, he's not here. We actually have a special guest. I told him earlier this week it was a bucket list moment to talk to him on a YouTube show. Well, guess what? Now we can cross it off the bucket list because we are about to get it done. This man, all right. I mean, we was in Jet Nation together, wasn't able to make things happen at the right time, but now, right now, is the right time. All right, we're talking about a New York Jets content creation superstar. All right, breaking down film, breaking down news, weekly spots with Jake Asman, and now he is here to take flight on Take Flight Talk, none other than DT, Dylan Tereman. Come on down, sir. How you doing? Welcome to Take Flight Talk.
Woody baby, man, that was a crazy intro. I love your energy. You're the first person that's ever called me a bucket list item, so for that I thank you for having me, and I'm happy we made this work.
Absolutely happy to have you. I appreciate you tuning in. You tuned in to the weekly show, the Boy Green Meets Woody show, and that pretty much was a catalyst to spark, lit that fire up, and now we on, and we got some things to say. I know you already addressed your peoples on your YouTube channel about Woody Johnson's comments. I haven't not yet responded to my people, so they get a double dip. They get to hear from you again, right? And then they get to hear from me. Long story short, Woody Johnson was not happy, according to Rich Cimini on his Flight Deck podcast. He was not happy about these 5 games. We know, right? They lost, by 23 straight, by 23, 5 straight games, worse in NFL history. Said he didn't even attend the last 3 as the owner of the team. DT, I know you addressed it before. Hit us with the Take Flight Talk community. Your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, it definitely changes the landscape of this offseason a bit. Admittedly, I was more on the side of Aaron Glenn's going to get a second year. He probably hasn't earned it, but I don't think he deserves necessarily to be fired after just one season, even though it was historically bad season. And now you get this information that Woody's pissed and he didn't even go to these games. And we've seen this play out before, right? It wasn't as public with Robert Saleh going into 2024, but it was clear that the leash was very short and the seat was very hot for Saleh entering 2024. And I don't want that to bleed into the Aaron Glenn regime, because that's what it's looking like based on those comments by Rich Cimini on Flight Deck, is that Woody Johnson is starting to lose patience. And we know what happens when Woody loses patience. He flips on a dime and he will send everybody packing and not think twice about it, whether it's for the detriment or the benefit of this team. So my hope is that if he does have this lingering feeling that AG is not the guy, just do it now. Please just do it now and get it over with. Even though I would love to see Aaron Glenn turn it around and be the guy. Like, I think that's first and foremost every Jets fan's opinion of Aaron Glenn is he needs to be the guy. We want him to be the guy to turn this thing around. Unfortunately, odds would tell you that it's probably not going to be the case with AG, right? He might not get that second contract with the Jets, which almost no coach gets anymore with this franchise. So I have started to flip a little bit more of this could get ugly quick in 2026 if they don't act now. So on one hand, yes, I think Aaron Glenn is going to come back. But on the second hand, it's like, if it's so short and it's such a hot seat, maybe the best case is to just pull the plug now. So hopefully maybe Woody cools down a little bit once he sees the free agents' dollars spent and the draft capital used, right? And we have a quarterback in place, which if we can complete a forward pass, it would look good. Hopefully maybe at that point he kind of recedes back and gives AG and Muji full go of this roster instead of trying to tear it down so quickly. So you can look at it both ways, but this might be the turning point for me in terms of now I have flipped super negative on AG, unfortunately.
Hey, welcome to the squad. But no, I mean, I agree with what you said, that in a perfect world for everybody, including me, AG, just be the guy. Like, please just, save us, be our Mike Vrabel. And that would be fantastic. But the likelihood of that happening after the atrocity of what we just seen in 2025 is like my grandma blood sugar, super low, super low. Okay. It's just not something that I really like I can realistically foresee. And I would have to agree, rip the band-aid. I mean, I've been saying let's not, still dance around. I've been saying fire AG. The only thing that now I'm a little nervous about is 25% of the coaches in the NFL have just gotten fired. We're talking about 8 vacancies. And maybe I'm biased. Yeah, I try my best to not be biased, to look at the league as a whole and, evaluate things for what they are. But, you cannot tell me the Jets are the 8th attractive spot for a head coach. You really can't. Like, the picks, obviously, the cap space. Now, here's the thing about that cap space. Aaron Glenn with 95 mil is not the same as John Harbaugh with 95 mil, where players are like, yo, I'm trying to play for that guy. I'm trying to play, I know this guy's system and I'm trying to do this, right? So that's something you also got to evaluate. I feel like even like a Cliff Kingsbury, has some guys, made some connections throughout his time in the league to be like, yo, I could, with 95 mil, I can bring this guy here. I can bring this guy there. So I personally feel like it's not a bad spot. But now that there's so many vacancies, now I'm a little nervous. Before, I was like, yeah, fire him. How is he the only person, in this top 6 to survive, right? I'm talking about that. But now we're talking about 8 spots. The Giants look good. They already got their guy. Mm-hmm. The Ravens. I mean, the Ravens. They got. So there are some attractive spots. What do you think about that? Like, if Woody listens to your advice now and is like, all right, rip off the Band-Aid. There it is. What do you see our coaching, our potential coaching search looking like?
Yeah, well, just stacking it up compared, because we would be the 9th team, right? We'd be the 9th opening. So you would have to just stack it up with the other teams, right? You mentioned Baltimore. I think that's the most attractive spot. Obviously, rich history, not the kind of history that Todd McShay talked about with the Raiders and Al Davis on his podcast, but like actual good history with the Ravens, whether it's ownership and drafting and just continuity at the head coaching spot. So they would be number 1. Maybe you could argue to me that the Atlanta Falcons are the second most attractive, but Woody, man, I think that the Jets might be the second most attractive. And that, again, maybe that's a little bit of homerism, green goggles on just a little bit, but I would say that they could be the second most attractive team right now, given what is in front of them in terms of resources to allocate this offseason. So I would put them above the Browns, who are picking at 4 overall in a potential 2, maybe 3 quarterback class and can't really get their guy potentially. And they're still stuck with Deshaun Watson. And you don't know what you're doing with Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, a lot of toxicity around the Haslams and the firing of Kevin Stefanski. You look at Las Vegas. If you want to be the 6th coach on their payroll, that's fantastic. They haven't won a playoff game since either of these top 2 quarterbacks, Fernando or Dante, were even on this planet alive in 2002. So, like, I don't understand why the Jets get so poo-pooed as like this bad destination. I get it. Woody is not the best owner, but this is such an attractive spot. The Dolphins have the dead spot or dead cap with Tua, and they have a lot of turnover on their roster incoming for the new head coach that they're going to hire. The Giants, maybe you could argue them as another spot that's attractive because they have the quarterback in Jackson Dart. The defensive line looks like it's shaping up with Abdul Carter and Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, and Brian Burns. And then you have the Tennessee Titans, and it's like, I don't think the Titans are that attractive outside of Cam Ward, right? We'll see what Mike Borgonzi does leading the head coaching search there. They might land on Matt Nagy, and that doesn't really inspire a ton of hope. So the Jets might be the second best opening, and that's what's so frustrating is even in a time where over 25% of the league could have a head coaching vacancy, the Jets would be a top 3 at worst destination given number 2 overall pick. You can go get your quarterback through the draft. You have enough dollars to allocate to the position to get a veteran. We have so much assets that we could theoretically be in the conversation for any quarterback that hits the market. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, as unrealistic as some of those might sound, we never know. Kyler Murray, we will be able to be at the conversation table for any quarterback. And I think that's what makes the Jets so attractive to me. So yeah, this would be the time. Last year they had 6 openings and they weren't necessarily as attractive as they are now. So yeah, you can push the cart down one more season and say we'll still be attractive entering 2027 if the bottom falls out with AG. But I feel like you got to strike when the iron's hot. And right now, guys like Stefanski, Mike McCarthy is out there still. Obviously, you're probably not getting John Harbaugh, so maybe you don't fire Aaron Glenn and show your whole ass to go get John Harbaugh, but you could definitely get a good head coach in here. And I don't necessarily subscribe to the any head coach is better than Aaron Glenn, because then we end up with Boy Green as our head coach and we're probably 0-17, right? So I think on one hand, it's a very attractive spot, and maybe not letting these guys use the resources now would be the best case of action for them.
I like that. I really do. Because I am trying to, you actually help calm my fears, because that's what I'm saying. I was, I'm team, get rid of Aaron Glenn. I'm trying to end this playoff drought as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And the iron is hot. So come on now. Come on now. We got to do something. One pairing, and this is the last I'll say about the coaching search. Because we don't want to keep talking hypotheticals. Mm-hmm. But I have heard rumors that Brian Flores, if he were to take the HC job, his OC would be Brian Dable, that's a pretty interesting pairing if you think about it. Obviously Dable, now who knows? Because they used to say, oh, he developed Josh Allen. Now, every Bills fan is like, look at what we've done since. And, but Dable, he won a legitimate NFL playoff, not on Madden. Like this, it was a real playoff game. He won it with an abysmal roster, one of the worst rosters I've ever seen, plus Saquon Barkley. And that's what they, used to win that game. Daniel Jones looked pretty solid. So I think he is a pretty solid offensive coach. What if he were to come here is that Garrett Wilson would get 75,000 targets in the season. That. And then Brian Flores, what he's been able to do on the defensive side. As a head coach, the Miami Dolphins defense was looking good. And then, in his stops since Pittsburgh, Minnesota, they're always, top 7. As long as he's not forced to have 2 on the roster, he's good. And now look, hey, come on now. They fired Flores. They're like, oh, McDaniel, he about to solve Tua, the Rubik's Cube. And now McDaniel's gone. Mm-hmm. Tua's out here. He's a coach killer, man. He got killer.
Tua coach fired.
Yeah. Tua coach is fired under his watch. Come on now. So that's we'll see. We'll see what happens with AG. But moving forward, what are your keys? See, because this is an issue that I had with their press conference. Super general. Yeah. We gotta evaluate. We gotta evaluate every stone unturned. But like, what are the actual things that need to take place between now and September to truly get this team on a path where we can be proud to be New York Jets fans?
Yeah, you really just have to hope, and again, it's hope, right? A little bit of blind faith that the trade deadline moves of Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams signaled a philosophical shift in this franchise. They're not going to be the defensive first, race to 20 type of franchise anymore. They're going to pivot and be offensively driven. Everything is going to revolve around finding the quarterback, getting the right infrastructure in place. And that was probably the only answer from the press conference, other than maybe a couple of things about the coaching search, that I thought was actual evidence of what they want. They talked about the offensive support system, the offensive line, the tight end room, he mentioned Garrett by name and then mentioned Brees by name. So maybe it was a slip of the tongue, but it sounds like they're going to be aggressive in trying to get Brees Hall back. I would love it if they tried to re-sign an AVT. Max Mitchell, again, if you want to just keep continuity as like your jumbo sixth offensive lineman. So my hope is that everything they do is focused on getting the offense right. You can't be the 32nd best passing offense in the league from week 6 and then carry that through for the rest of the season like they did last year. They started off hot, obviously against Pittsburgh, which looked like a very big mirage, right? Week 1 lies. They were the 12th best passing offense. Week 2, Justin gets hurt against Buffalo. They crashed to the 29th. They dropped 17 spots. Then they dropped even further to 32, and then they stayed there the rest of the year. So everything needs to be focused on the quarterback, getting that spot solidified, whether it is a Kirk Cousins, a Malik Willis, a Kyler Murray, whatever the veteran option is. And then you create a buffer between having to put Dante Moore out there week 1 or Fernando Mendoza or Ty Simpson out there week 1. You create a little cushion to allow them to go into the year with the veteran. Again, solely focusing on the offensive side. Defense is very important, and we'll get to that in a sec, but everything needs to be driven through the offense, having a schematic advantage against your defense. And we just didn't see that enough from Tanner Engstrand. Are there examples where it could have worked and fell apart in the game? Sure. I look at the Miami Dolphins the first time we played them when Braylon Allen fumbled inside the 10-yard line. We were running the ball at a healthy clip that game. Or the first time we played the Patriots, we had a 14-play, 72-yard drive where we only threw the ball 3 times. And I think even on one of those dropbacks, Fields scrambled. So it was really 2 out of 14 plays were actually passing the ball. So get a little bit away from the run, but still maintain a good identity on offense. And the quarterback is going to help with that. So that's really what the focus has to be, is offensively driven, schematic advantages week to week, and actually show us that, hey, Buffalo's coming into town. They pinched in on us in week 2 when we did our condensed splits and nobody on the perimeter could block their corners, scraping off the edges and getting tackles for losses. How do we adjust for that in the second quarter of the game and not allow that to continue and get Justin Fields hurt? That's the type of things that I think needs to be the sole focus of this offseason.
So obviously, like you just said, finding the right person, like the QB, is a big deal. The veteran and the rookie. I love that. We can't be starting these rookies week 1. So I definitely love that. The veteran and the rookie. But then, you have some light bulbs popping up for me right here with, Tanner, the staff there. Do you think a staff change needs to be made? You could say, a removal or an addition, both. Do we have the right offensive staff, do you think, to lead us into 2026?
I would say right now, no. And I think Aaron Glenn admitted as much. The question from Rich Cimini was talking about, do you have the right coaching infrastructure around the quarterback? And Glenn said, I'm not going to tell you that we don't have those guys, but we're going to do everything we can to get those guys, which in a roundabout way tells me he's admitting he does not have the guys, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Charles London is a quality quarterback coach enough to say, hey, go, here's the keys to this brand new Ferrari of Dante Moore. Please don't crash it, right? And I feel like that's kind of where we're at with him. So I would like to see a change at quarterback coach. The guy I keep bringing up on my channel is Bill Musgrave. He has 21 years of experience, 19 as an OC or quarterbacks coach. He oversaw 3 Pro Bowl quarterbacks. 1 was in the late 90s. And the guy never threw for 18 touchdowns and 3,000 yards in a season. 1 season under Musgrave, he had 4,400 passing yards and 36 touchdowns in the late 90s. So it's like pretty crazy how that happened. And then he oversaw early season Matt Ryan, who won the Offensive Rookie of the Year and was a multi-Pro Bowler in the first 3 or 4 years of his career. And then I don't like this quarterback, but he actually got Derek Carr to play at a competent enough level, similar to how Clint Kubiak did in New Orleans with him in 2024. So I'm sorry, if you can make Derek Carr a viable option at quarterback, you're worth almost anything to me as a coach. So Bill Musgrave certainly would be a guy that I would bring in at quarterback coach, or Mark Brunell. I think when Aaron Glenn was originally hired, I remember a Jordan Schultz tweet coming out of potential staffing hires. Brunell was on it. Banjo was on it and Wilkes was on it. And I was like, wow, that would be 3 really big hires. Obviously, we know what happened with Wilkes. Banjo was a home run. But I thought Mark Brunell would have been a perfect veteran voice in the ear of the quarterback, even if it is a Justin Fields. So I would say quarterback coach. I'm not in love with Sean Jefferson, the wide receivers coach, who was the only offensive positional coach holdover from the Salo regime, right? And I feel like there's just too many details lacking in the wide receiver room. And maybe that's part of the reason Aaron Rodgers didn't love Garrett Wilson towards the end, and he had those cryptic things to say about G5. But I do think there is an element of lack of detail from the wide receiver position. So maybe an upgrade could be had there. Looking at the positive hires, though, Steve Hyden, man, that offensive line coach that they hired, and it's like the antithesis of Charles London, a former running back coach turned quarterback coach. He was a former tight ends coach. His only other experience was assistant O-line with the Cardinals, and they were pretty bad that year too. So it was very hit or miss with Steve Hyden, and I think he's been a complete 180 from Keith Carter. So yes, they got a couple things right. I like Scott Turner, and I like Tanner Engstrand to a degree, but there needs to be another injection of a veteran voice, because the more voices around the quarterback, I feel like is actually more conducive to success for that rookie, right? I look at Sam Darnold with Josh McCown. The second Josh McCown left in year 2, or maybe year 3 of Sam Darnold, things started to spiral downhill for him. And it felt like Josh McCown was an extension of the coaching staff in the way that he could help Sam Darnold. So even if it's not a veteran guy, maybe it's a young mind that you're able to bring in for the quarterback, you have to surround that person with enough quality coaches before we even get to the on-field, the other 10 men on the field with him. You have to solidify the coaching staff and make sure that you almost dummy proof the coaching staff for this quarterback, so that no matter what the environment is, they should be able to succeed.
Absolutely love that. Shout out to Sam Darnold, number 1 seed, my man. You know, all these playoff games happening, my man. Wait until next week.
Crazy.
Couldn't be more proud, happy for him. But I like what you said. I like the names. You know, now I'm going to be looking out. Bill Musgrave, is he currently with the NFL team?
He was the quarterback's coach the past 3 seasons with Cleveland. So now with Stefanski out, they're possibly going to have a lot of turnover on that staff. So it feels like the most seamless fit. And I wanted to put Mark Brunell's name out there, obviously for the former connection to AG, but also, would it be that much of like an inspiring hire if he went out and got like a guy from a Detroit Lions staff who severely underperformed last year? I feel like that's almost like a cop-out for AG to have to go back to the Detroit well. I think he did the right job of taking Tanner Engstrand over like John Morton, who became their offensive coordinator and then got the play calling duties taken away from him. But I don't know if I love plucking from Detroit's coaching staff again when it seemed like it didn't really work last year.
That's super fair. Shout out to Ben Johnson. I don't even want to say anything more about that, but just seeing how one coordinator, they doing work, the other coordinator, not quite. But before I get to the last, like the big ticket item, you know, what we all going to be doing tonight, you know, I want to talk about the defense though, because for me personally, you know, kind of like what you said, like player wise, like personnel wise, like, you know, O-line, I don't want to say check, but, you know, we got to figure out the, you know, AVT, you know, Johnson, so we got to figure out the interior. But 4 out of 5, you know, check. Garrett, check. Mason, they re-signed Ruckert. Cool. I'm cool with that. Check. Re-sign Brees. You know, we'll see. If they don't re-sign Brees, I looked at this with BG. There were some names. You know, Kenneth Walker, injury prone, but I mean, he's an electric talent. You know, if he's healthy. And then the other wide receivers, I was not impressed with the free agency class. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like Raheed Shaheed was the best name on that list. And yeah, no disrespect to my guy Raheed. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
He's a fantasy, you know, boomer bust, but wide receiver 2, like, so that means okay, now we either got to go to the draft, or like I really do like AD Mitchell. I feel like I'm probably his biggest fan, like in the fan base. Like, he's just so twitchy, you know, a bigger body. I've been, you know, looking for these. Where are these 6-foot dudes at? Because we keep trying to, build with, Elijah Moore, 5'8". We was loving Braxton Berry. We loving all these short dudes. Garrett, I understand, he's like right there, like right at the, but no, AD 6'2", has the speed. I mean, was cooking up Christian Gonzalez, talking about like, so I don't see Pollo, talking about he was out here doing some work. But, but for the most part, the offense, like we have some things in place, right? The O-line, we have multiple weapons already. The defense, like I don't know what we have. I literally have no idea what we have. And 31 points at halftime, like allowing that just makes me nauseous. It makes me nauseous. And like this is where my biggest thing with Aaron Glenn, like I never saw the Detroit steel curtain. I was not seeing that. Did I see that in San Fran with Salah? Yes. And I was like, damn, he gonna bring it over here, and he did. I never saw that in Detroit, so I don't know of his ability to elevate guys. And I know people when I say that, people are like, well, look at Jarvis Brownlee. I mean, he was all right.
He was okay, yeah.
So I feel like if there's one side of the ball that needs attention, like I feel like we might need like 11 new starters. Like, talk to me about, because I know you just said like you're very offense heavy. You want to make sure we have the right guys, right? The right QB, add a weapon if need be. But you said we'll get the defense in a second. Let's talk about it, because right now I feel like they've been completely abandoned.
Yeah, I would say right now you're looking at maybe 5 viable options for the starters on the team right now. Jermaine Johnson's probably going to be back. Harrison Phillips and Juwan Briggs, who are great additions, especially Juwan Briggs, who's still young. Will McDonald, I feel like, is like 50-50. Can he be there? So maybe you go in with a little bit more D-line continuity. You probably need to overhaul the whole linebacker room. I'm not a big Jamie and Sherwood fan. I understand people will say just get a Mike Backer in here and you can push him to off ball and maybe he can have some success. And that's all well and good. I don't know if I love paying 2 linebackers a ton of money, so they might have to find that guy early on in the draft, like a Sonny Styles or a CJ Allen from Georgia, just to mitigate the financial allocation to the position. But I think Quincy Williams probably gone. And then from the cornerback perspective, I think they have enough pieces there between AZ Thomas coming off the shoulder, Brandon Stevens in year 2, Brownlee, who you mentioned, and then maybe you add a couple depth pieces there, but you're looking at maybe 5 guys at the most. So it's going to be an overhaul of this defense. And that's why the defensive coordinator hire is so important to me, because we need to see what defense they're running. Is it going to be a situation where AG is very hands-on, and it's much like we saw in Detroit from him, cover 1, press man, a little bit more exotic blitzes than we saw with Steve Wilks? Or is he going to bring in a guy and just say, hey, the keys to the defense are yours, I'm going to be hands off? I think the former approach is the best one, where it's a blend of AG and the new defensive coordinator. Like hypothetically, let's just use Durante Jones, right? The defensive pass game coordinator that they are requesting to interview from Minnesota. He comes from the Flores tree. Flores is known for exotic blitzes, coverage disguises, cover zero, simulated pressures where they send a linebacker type and drop out a DN type or things of that nature. So a much different schematic approach to defense, but you can't tell me that Brian Flores doesn't have his players in the best position to win from a schematic standpoint every week. You look at him going all the way back to New England under Bill Belichick, stopping early season Lamar Jackson, and then he carried that over into Miami when he was the head coach, and they still continued to fluster Lamar Jackson. And I don't want to just say, oh, if you could stop Lamar Jackson, your defense is perfect. But they were pretty much carried this year in Minnesota on the back of that defense. Like 9 was not doing it for them offensively. And you have such a great coach in Kevin O'Connell, but you have an equally as good coach on defense in Brian Flores. So if you could pluck a staffer from that tree and bring that here, I think that would be fantastic, because then you get to see what the identity of this defense is. I get it. They had the right process, the wrong result with Steve Wilks trying to emulate that San Francisco defense, that 4 down linemen, we're going to drop 7. And then when they blitz, we got to make sure it gets home. But it was the most predictable stuff with Wilkes. So it would be a complete 180 in terms of schematic and philosophical like tendencies, right, to go from a Durante Jones. So that's what I would like to see is who is the DC before we go into the actual personnel. But yeah, you're looking at like at least 5 new starters on defense.
Yeah, it's bad. You brought up some good points. And now, you keep talking about Flores. Might as well just make him the head coach. Make him the head coach. But definitely some interesting points. And yeah, I mean, like the Jets that I know, and this is what you were talking about with the shift. Like that's what I know is a tough defense, run the ball, Chris Ivory, type dudes, and get some points on the board. But if we're trying to, become air raid, that's obviously super exciting as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't just be losing games like 31-35. Like I'm gonna need some sort of resistance from the guys on defense. But definitely, the most important piece of that puzzle, air raid or not, of course, is the quarterback. This is a franchise that is literally starved for quarterbacks. And now we're in a situation, and this is where I'm going to rely on your expertise. I'm about to learn a lot. I'm about to just sit here with a pen and paper for a little bit because, I've been hearing Fernando all season. Fernando. Seeing some reports. What I love is, off the field. And I feel like people don't take that into consideration when they look at QBs, is off the field. Like I felt like I knew off the field from Zach Wilson that he had no chance of because New York is a unique place. You got to be okay with losing. You got to be okay with criticism, warranted or unwarranted. You got to be okay. You got to have a thick skin, and a long-term vision for what's about to take place. And I felt like Zach wasn't even close to having that. I felt like Sam did. He didn't want to leave New York. He was, but we pushed him out. But with Dante Moore and Fernando, I know more about Fernando off the field than Dante. But can you, because you've been covering these dudes, you've been looking at film. In your opinion, are they both franchise quarterbacks? Like, are we actually in a good spot where you're feeling like, hey, at the number 2 pick, we have a franchise quarterback? Talk to me a little bit about that. Compare and contrast. If you had number 1 pick, who would be your guy? Hit me with some facts.
Yeah, I think there is certainly an element, and I'll lump Ty Simpson into this as well. There is an element of all 3 of these guys having that it factor, right, where they could turn your franchise around. I don't want to label them as the savior, right? I feel like that's how you get into the problem with Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson as well. I remember going back to Zach Wilson still doing his BYU media segments after he got drafted by the Jets, and I'm just visibly looking at the kid, and I'm like, there's no way this kid saves the Jets. Like, it's just so obvious. And it didn't happen. And we knew right away mentally he was gone, and we probably should have stuck with Sam, but don't repeat the same mistake a third time and bank on these guys to be the savior, right? That's why I keep preaching, go get a veteran, sit this guy for 8 to 16 games. When you look at Fernando Mendoza, yeah, he's a little bit of a cornball, and that's probably an element that the Jets kind of need from their quarterback room, right? Somebody who's not going to go out and be partying in Times Square or wherever it is, downtown New York City, wherever. You definitely need an element of a cornball type nerd guy who's all about schematics, all about film. I'm almost to the point where if they get Fernando Mendoza and he leads us to the playoffs, I'm going to erase all social media except for LinkedIn and YouTube and be on the Fernando wave completely. So yeah, there's a lot to like about Fernando. Then there's definitely some traits that I don't think he's the number 1 guy in, right? I think the Jets X Factor guys have been all over it in terms of facing pressure, right? You break down some of the key traits of a quarterback. I look at arm strength, size, pocket presence, escapability, mobility, accuracy, poise, mechanic release, anticipation, decision-making, football IQ, and leadership. And the special thing about this draft class to me, which bodes well for the Jets, is Fernando has some traits that he's number 1. Fernando has some traits where he's number 2. he also has some traits where I think he's number 3 of those groupings. And then Ty Simpson, same thing. He might have the best arm strength out of anybody. I saw him throw 62 yards, a 62-yard bomb against South Carolina this year, and it was dropped, right? One of 30 drops that Alabama had this season. So he certainly didn't get the help around him from the supporting cast. But then you look at accuracy, and maybe Fernando Mendoza has the best accuracy from short to intermediate, and then Dante Moore has the best deep ball accuracy, and Ty Simpson has the 3rd best accuracy of the group. And then you go to footwork, and you can just see the uncertainty of no consensus number 1. This is not Trevor Lawrence and then 4 other consolation prizes. I don't think Dante Moore is a consolation prize whatsoever to Fernando Mendoza, and I'm almost 50-50 leaning Dante Moore as my quarterback 1. I think he's 3 years younger than Fernando Mendoza. He's only 20. He'd be 21 by the time he's drafted. I think mid-May he turns 21. So there's so much more room for growth in all of these guys. But Dante Moore, man, the way the ball comes out of his hand on like some of those intermediate to deep passes, especially like between the numbers, between the hashes, those seam balls to Kenyon Sadiq, his first round tight end there at Oregon, makes him, intriguing as a number 1. And then Ty Simpson, he gives me all of the good vibes of Duke Daniel Jones. And I know people say, oh, Daniel Jones, like he was so bad in the NFL with the Giants, and he only had like a glimpse of success with the Colts before he got hurt. And I know he led the Giants to the playoffs, but you go back and watch Duke Daniel Jones, and like his mobility was still able to hurt you, similar to how Ty Simpson can. He's not like a dual threat by any stretch, but the combination of arm and leg talent is certainly there for Ty Simpson. So I'm not putting myself into a pigeonhole with this is my guy 100%. And if I did, I'd have to lean Dante Moore right now. But the fact that they're all so clustered together helps the Jets so much, because you only have to fall in love with 2. You're not getting jumped by some mystery team, right? You would obviously have to trade out of the pick if you were to move out of that top spot. So you get Dante Moore to declare, and you're almost guaranteed a guy that you love. And even if it is Ty Simpson and you want to take him at 2, I could see the path 100%. And now you fast forward to the game tonight, and this might be the most important game on the Jets schedule. And the season's 5 days, removed from being over. So it is crazy how this all works. I guess from my perspective, looking at this game, because I'm sure that's where we're going to go, is I want Fernando Mendoza to look like rookie year Sam Darnold against the Green Bay Packers, where he went toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers, and they lost like 34-31 on a last-minute drive where the defense let up some points. So I want that to be Fernando. I want Dante Moore to do 2019 Joe Burrow, Peach Bowl versus Oklahoma, 7 touchdown passes in the first half. I want Dante to just light up the scoreboard, create havoc at the top of the draft, make the Raiders get confused on who they like more. Tom Brady loves Fernando Mendoza. We know that. But does Dante Moore perk up the ears of an Al Davis and a John Spytek a little bit more by having this crazy run in the college football playoffs? So the more uncertainty of this class, I think it actually helps the Jets. As long as they key in on, we like 2 of the 3, we're guaranteed to get them. So I think it's a really good spot for the Jets to be in, despite all of the negative things that led us to this point.
Wow. So I'm hearing some keys moving forward. We gotta, get somebody else in that room, a coach, another veteran voice, and let's try to actually. And this one is huge. Wholeheartedly agree. I mean, they're both huge, but this one, you cannot have them be the savior. And they said that to who did they say that to? I think they said it to Zach. Like, oh, like we'll lift you up. Like you don't have to worry about lifting us up. You remember that?
Yeah, that was awful by Joe Douglas. And then you proceed to give him like the worst offensive weapons, no offensive line. I understand they tried with Mekhi Becton, but like you can't get quarterback and then the pass protecting left tackle to the quarterback completely wrong and expect to have success.
Agreed. So now that we have that, I like what you said, getting another voice in there. And we have some weapons. I definitely want because I feel like you draft one of those guys number 2. Is that a foregone conclusion that the number 16 pick is a receiver?
I think the betting favorite would be to take a receiver to help out your quarterback, right? If it's Mekhi Lemon, you can interchange him and Garrett Wilson in the slot, which I think you give Garrett Wilson some ability to play in the slot. You get the two-way goes. You don't have as much press man coverage. I think Garrett beats press fine, but you definitely open up the element of having Mekhi Lemon or Garrett in the slot, or you go with another taller receiver like Carnell Tate. And then you have Tate and AD Mitchell, who I do like as well on the boundary. And then you have Garrett primarily in the slot. You could also go Jordan Tyson, who might be the best route runner in the class. And if he could stay healthy, he might be like, I don't want to say the next coming of Odell Beckham Jr., but you get some vibes of him that like he is so special without the ball in his hand. And even with the ball in his hand, Jordan Tyson might be, health aside, if you could turn off that Madden injury slider, Jordan Tyson might be like the number one player in this draft, quite honestly, just due to talent. So I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion because you could always attack wide receiver at 33, but between wide receiver and maybe edge rusher, I feel like those would have to be the two spots where if I was putting my money on a sports book, that would be the position I would go because like I said, you have to change philosophically to an offensive first mindset. And I use the term dummy proof, right? Make it so that if you were playing quarterback, Woody, do you have enough weapons and talent around you to help you succeed in the NFL, right? I feel like that's the most important thing we can do. And that's not to say, dummy proof. Some people think it's like watering down the offense. It's not. It's really just being like a version of the Bengals where, yeah, they have a ton of talent across the board, but you also know that Zach Taylor is not a bad coach and they're just kind of masking all that, right? Like they're a good offensive first team. Can you emulate a little bit of that while still not being the Bengals on defense? Because we saw even the Jets put up 500 yards of offense on the Bengals defense. So that's really what I'm coming down to when I say dummy proof is like, if I was in there, could I get a good product on the field? So that's where I'm at. And if you have to overspend a little bit or, overpay a free agent, like if you got to throw $28 million at Alec Pierce, maybe it's worth doing. So I love AD Mitchell. Maybe he's probably at best your wide receiver 3. You mentioned him at the line of scrimmage, and Pat Surtain on his podcast did a great job of like, hey, he was playing limited snaps against us, but he's got some giddy up and some release packages that are really helpful to his success. And obviously it just needs to come together for AD a little more, but I don't necessarily want to just assume he's wide receiver 2 going into the offseason. Can he be wide receiver 3, maybe even wide receiver 4, right? You get Garrett Wilson, you get an Alec Pierce free agency, or you trade for a Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville, who seems to be, out targeted by Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington and all the other mouths they have to feed in Jacksonville. And then AD can be your wide receiver 4, Mechie can be your 5, Isaiah Williams or Arian Smith can be your 6, instead of having these guys out in your base 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets. So you push everybody down the pecking order, and it might seem a bit excessive, but I feel like you almost have to overcorrect the offense so much that we can't do a half measure and just assume Garrett, AD, and 1 second or 4th round pick at wide receiver is going to do the job. So that's where I'm at with 16, but I could be swayed into edge rusher, Sonny Styles specifically at linebacker. If Caleb Downs were to make it, obviously I would run the card up for a Caleb Downs. But I'm not looking at like Jeremiah Love. Even if he is there at 16, I'm just like, we don't need to push running back in the first round. So I would say betting odds favorite is wide receiver.
I hear that. You convincing me because I was like, yo, we gotta walk out. Edge. That would be, I don't love Will McDonald.
Yeah.
I feel like Jermaine, he's good enough against the run. Come back off on Achilles. Obviously his mentals like could be best on the team, like where his heart is at.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves Will. So edge is really important to me. But you are convincing me because like you said, like if you do that and you are pushing the ADs down the list. Put me back there. You know what I'm saying? Like that we really should be good. And depending on like specifically if we're drafting, a receiver, now we're talking about for the next like 3 years, guaranteed you have Dante or oh my God, I'm forgetting everybody's name right now. Dante Ty or Fernando with Garrett, Tate, you know, Mason Taylor. Like it's a guarantee for the next 3 years that they're going to grow into this beautiful system. So you definitely got me convinced. You got me hyped. I mean, God, did you deliver, my man? You came through. Take Flight Talk DT, absolutely delivering. You know we'll be watching this game tonight. So I definitely appreciate your insight on the players. You know, just everything, really everything. Thank you for your time. But before you go, let us know for the few, you know, Take Flight talkers that might be living under a rock that don't know how to find you. How can they find you?
Yes, sir, Woody. I appreciate you, bro. At Dylan Tereman on YouTube. I'm approaching 1,300 subscribers. I'm on the road to 2K. I'm so thankful, so grateful, so blessed to have a lot of great support along the way, including you know, going on Jake's show every Thursday. So the Dylan Tereman Football Show is the flagship show over there. And it also becomes an audio only format podcast on the Believe in Jets podcast, BLEAV. You don't have to believe in the Jets, but you got to believe in your boy DT. So that's the audio version of that one. And then we also do Draft Talk with DT, where I just did a film review and short evaluation of Ty Simpson on the channel. It was just over 2 hours. I did 5 plays from the Oklahoma game in the national, I guess the college football playoffs. So we got Dylan Tereman Football Show, Draft Talk with DT, and the Believe in Jets podcast. Twitter at D Tereman. I'm pretty active over there, but like I said, if we get Fernando, man, I'm only going to be linked in from here on out if Fernando turns this Jets around. So, but Woody, I appreciate you, man. This has been a long time coming. I'm glad we were able to collab, and it's so nice to hear somebody say I'm a bucket list item. So that means the world to me, bro. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. It means the world to me for you to be on. So I appreciate it. And hey, this was the first time, but you better bet your bottom dollar it's not going to be the last time. All right. We're going to be talking. Appreciate you. And hey, come on now. Let's go. I don't even know who to root for. Let's go both QB. Let's go offense.
Rob Lowe with the NFL hat in the stands. That's how we are. Like, we're just neutral. We just want a good game, no injuries, and let's see them both ball out, right?
Yes, definitely no injuries, and let's ball out.